My name is Susan Garrett. I am the chairman of the Illinois Campaign for Political Reform. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan, watchdog, good government group. We focus on campaign finance reform, civic responsibility, judicial campaign finance issues, and of course, transparency, accountability, and disclosure. We want to thank all the candidates for coming today. We are thrilled. We think it's a good showing, and also our campaign financial experts. I also want to do a special shout out to Roosevelt University, who has been extremely helpful in providing the space for us, and also for the Committee for Economic Development. They are a policy group, a government policy group out of Washington, D.C., and they have helped support this event and other events that we've held in this nature. Our thanks also go to CAN TV, who is live streaming right now. For those of you who want to go home or want to watch it later, go to cantv.org. And I think that's it. If my staff wrote me a special note that says thank them as well, because they helped put this whole thing together. I also want to introduce our moderator, the famous Steve Edwards from University of Chicago. He's executive director of the University of Chicago's Nonpartisan Institute of Politics. He has nicely agreed to be our moderator. He will leave 15 minutes early, so I'm going to step in for him. And then a little bit of housekeeping. Paul Ryan, who was going to be participating from Washington, D.C., his flight got canceled. So I think with that, we should welcome Steve, and on we go.
Thank you, Senator, and good afternoon to everybody. Looking forward to a great conversation here today about a critical issue in our political process, notably campaign finance and the way our elections are funded and the way candidates are able to support their campaigns for office here in Chicago and beyond. We're going to do this in three parts. We will have first a conversation with David Melton and Ray Lopez Calderon about the small donor match advisory referendum on the ballot on Tuesday, February 24th here in Chicago. Then we will turn our attention to my right over here and engage the candidates for mayor of Chicago on the same issue and hear from them on their experiences and their perspective on this very issue. And then we will move over here to my left, where we will engage a group of candidates running for aldermen in various wards in Chicago on the same set of issues. We'll also have some time a bit later for your questions for all of these folks. But without further ado, please join me in giving a warm round of applause to David Melton, who's the Executive Director of the Illinois Campaign for Political Reform, and Ray Lopez Calderon, who is the Executive Director for Common Cause Illinois. Ray and David, welcome. So many people in the audience may know about the idea of a small donor matching system, which is at the heart of this advisory referendum on February 24th. But I imagine there are people here who aren't fully familiar with all the details, and many people who may be watching through the live stream who may have very little idea. So what is a small donor matching system, and why is it important in your view?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having us. And thanks for doing this, Steve, and thank all of you for coming. A small donor matching system is a system in which the key part of it is to try and change the focus of candidates running for office. We're trying to change their focus from focusing on wealthy individuals or special interests to fund their campaign, to get them to focus more on average voters who can make small donations. Those small donations then can be matched with public funds, and in that way we can shift the candidate's focus from a relatively small slice of the populace onto the general public as a whole, which of course are the people that those people are supposed to be representing.
All right, so in greater detail, how does that work exactly? How is a system like this structured once implemented?
So once it's implemented, there's a sort of variety of things that people have to do to actually be eligible for the fund. So the way that, and again, we're going to probably focus a lot on New York today, but there's actually 24 states, I think, in the country that have some version of public financing on different levels, whether it's state, whether it's county, or city. So one of the things it does is that candidates have to demonstrate some viability before they're eligible for money. So New York does a $5,000 minimum funds raised. So you have to raise $5,000 or more, but you have to raise it from 75 or more small donors. And they also have a voluntary cap of $175 per donor. So you have to show that you can actually reach a lot of people and they're willing to invest a small donation.
So just to be clear, 5,000 people donating up to $175, and there have to be 75 different donors in that pool.
At least 75 different donors, $5,000 is the number. Yeah, and so you can't just wake up and say, well, I want public money to do this. You really have to demonstrate community support. So that's one of the things to do. I don't know if you wanted to add a piece to that, David?
Sure. No, that's the primary way that people qualify under all these programs is raising a set number of small donations to prove that they have a base of public support, so you're not using public funds to fund fringe candidates who don't really have any support.
Well, and Ray was mentioning the system in New York once again. They, at that $175 threshold in New York City, what then comes to the campaign in return that's met those particular figures with each contribution thereafter?
Once a candidate qualifies by raising that minimum number of small donations, then they get, in New York City, they get matched at a 6-to-1 ratio. So for instance, for $175, they get 6 times that in matching public funds. So for each $175 private donation, they're raising a total really of about $1,225. That makes it worth the candidate's while to focus on average voters and smaller donors.
What about a max at which someone participating in this system is allowed to raise over the course of a campaign cycle? I would imagine that there are upside limits to the total amount raised.
There are. So one of the benefits of these systems is that because it's voluntary, we're not imposing this on the candidates. They have to choose to participate. They have to voluntarily participate in order to receive the public funds. But in return for that, you do get to impose limits. So you can impose limits on the types of contributions they will accept. You can also impose limits on the overall expenditures that they'll be able to make during their campaign. And in the New York system, they do both of those things. They impose some limits on the maximum amounts of contributions you can accept, and they also impose overall expenditure limits on the campaigns. And then they have caps that they will match up to. So for instance, for mayor, they change these with each election to keep up with inflation and with the cost of campaigns. But in the most recent election, for the mayoral election, a candidate would max out with basically $3.7 million in public matching funds for mayoral election and about $90,000 for a candidate for the city council.
You also talked about the public money. Ray, where does the money come from in a system like New York, or if one were to be implemented in Chicago, that would provide this kind of 6-to-1 match?
So it really varies widely. Again, there's different versions of this around the country. New York had decided about 20 years ago that they were having such a fundamental problem with money in their politics that they decided to make this a general appropriation for the fund. So they've decided we are going to fund this, however, it's in our budget. They also determined that it costs less to do that than it does to bleed money for corruption and other problems. And so they're very aggressive in the system, but other systems have found different ways to do it. So for example, Oregon, which has a statewide version, and we may have to actually look at a statewide because of our home rule laws in Illinois. We have to use the state as part of the way we create this, but they have a voluntary checkbox for their state income taxes. You can check off $1 from your refund to go to the public financing system.
The same way you would for presidential election cycles currently.
Exactly. And then we also, we've been toying with the idea with a few of the folks in City Council of doing a utilities type of checkbox. So like when you do your water bill, you can actually donate $1. So there's different ways to do it. There's some municipalities that have implemented this, and some folks have really looked at, well, how do we create a revenue stream that's tied to the actual problem? So for example, getting a surcharge on criminal fines for white collar crime and those kind of things. Some cities do it for other kinds of crimes. We probably would want to be more careful in Chicago to see how that would work.
and all told, what...
No red light cameras for public financing.
All told, what do we think a system like this would cost in a city like Chicago, net?
So usually from LA to New York, because LA has a partial public financing system, we can range anywhere from I think it's 0.05% of the budget to 1% of the budget, and so somewhere within that range. Chicago has a lot of aldermen, and so it may be somewhere in the middle probably. But David, if you might want to.
Sure. Yeah, as Ray had said, we have looked at, ICPR has looked at and has a chart on our website of the 12 other municipal programs that exist, and basically they come in between 0.01% of their overall municipal budget and 0.05% of the municipal budget. But I think Ray's right that the target here should be between 0.05 and 0.1% of the municipal budget. The Chicago municipal budget is about $9 billion a year. So 0.1% of that would be about $9 million. 0.05% would be about $4.5 million. So that's the ballpark that you're looking at.
So theoretically, in the city of Chicago, home rule issues aside, you're saying you could target a public financing system for municipal offices, aldermanic through the municipal constitutional offices, for somewhere between $4.5 to $9 million.
Yeah, I think that's
on a quadrennial basis.
I think that's right. New York spent about, I think they're about 2.5 times Chicago size, and have roughly the same number of candidates that we would have here in an election for city council and mayor. And I think they spent something in the neighborhood of $30 million, which again was about 0.05% of their overall municipal budget.
Yeah, and just to underline this again, you know, Dick Simpson at the University of Illinois has calculated what we actually bleed in improper influence and corruption, and it's somewhere around $500 million. And so if you look at it as this like maintenance for your democratic machine, a different kind of democratic machine. If you look at it that way, it's money invested to save a whole lot more money.
But if I'm a candidate in any of these races, or if I'm a candidate for mayor and I want to raise on my own, above and beyond the limits of $1 million, $15 million, $30 million, $50 million, what have you, what's to prevent me from doing so, and what impact does that have on the reality of a race if I opt out, essentially?
Yeah, it depends on the type of system you create. You can create what's called an open system or a closed system. In a closed system, you basically prohibit candidates from accepting any other contribution. So that would be like the presidential system that we had, where if you take public money, you can't raise any other money. Most of these systems are some variation of an open system where there are some limits imposed, but candidates aren't necessarily precluded from raising other funds. There may be some overall limits that they agree to, or there may be some limits on the amount of the largest contribution they'll accept, or a percentage cutoff. So it all depends on the program. Those vary considerably, but it's basically for each municipality to decide that for itself, what kind of a limit it wants to set. In terms of the, let me just address for a second the problem with the opt-out candidate, because I think we have a great case study in New York. In 2009, Mayor Bloomberg ran for mayor of New York City. He spent about $106 million on that mayoral campaign. The other candidates were limited to spending about $3.5 million in primary and another $3.5 million in general election. But that $7 million turned out to be enough for them to run competitive campaigns. And in fact, Bloomberg ended up winning that election, but it ended up being, I think, about a 50 to 46% election. So his challenger was able to get 46% of the vote, even though he was limited to spending $7 million.
So the issue here is not just targeting the overall influence of big money in a particular election. It's actually trying to finesse and support a way for other candidates to enter the fray and be competitive in doing so.
Right, and the way that we usually put this is that we're not creating a match per match. Somebody's going to have more money is always going to have more money, but the idea is to create a floor so they're not drowned out or knocked down by this extreme spending. I wanted to say something else about New York. One of the really interesting things about New York is that for constitutional reasons, we can't force candidates to opt into the system. But what's really interesting is that every winning candidate for city council in the last election actually was a public financing participant. And that's because New York has not only created the law, because you can create all kinds of laws and people find ways to get around the laws. That's the truth. It's our business to continually change the laws to make it difficult. But at the end of the day, New York spent about 20 years really building a culture around public financing. So there's a second half to the public financing system where there's a lot of peer pressure and a lot of sort of voter information. So voters get voter guides where public financing candidates are in them and the other candidates are not. To the point where, like, if you're not in the guide, it actually is a litmus test. You look kind of suspicious. And so they've worked on changing the culture, and that's one of the most important things. I know there's a group of folks I've worked with recently from runclean.org, and they're actually experimenting with the other half of public financing right now, which is getting voter information out from citizens, not from candidates or campaigns.
Let me follow up on some of the learnings from the New York example. And there are other municipalities, you also mentioned other states, Ray, that are involved in this. In addition to the culture change, in addition to the competitive nature of these races, what are some of the other benefits that you see a system like this providing?
Well, let me take a first crack at that, and I'll turn it over to Ray, because I think there are a number of benefits that we've seen, and the New York example, because it's gone on for over 20 years, has provided confirmation on a lot of these points. One benefit you see is that as a result of people feeling like their contributions make a difference, you get people having a lowered sense of cynicism, I'd say, and that leads to a greater rate of participation, both in terms of donors in the system, small donors participating in the system, attending political events and paying attention to the election, and also in terms of voter participation rates in the actual elections.
We've seen a difference in the jurisdictions where this is in place in that?
There have been studies done on the New York system which have shown dramatic differences in the percentage of small donors in elections where you have this type of system versus you have another. They have sort of a case study because they have a state system where they vote for state representatives that's not a public financing system. And there you see dramatically lower percentages in terms of small donors and small donor participation in campaigns. So you see a much greater level of engagement by the public in these kinds of systems, and also that tends to broaden, both from a diversity standpoint, to broaden both the base of voters and people participating in campaigns, and also broaden the diversity of the candidates who are able to participate in the campaigns.
Right, and I've actually, and this is more anecdotal, but I've worked with some folks from the Minnesota State Legislature, which has a partial subsidy system, and one of the senators there actually told me, he said, the one thing I love about our system is that it's like having a calling card. I can go into communities who don't normally have the kind of wealth that other donors where you might find other donors, and say with a straight face that your $5 does matter, and because you really mean it. It does make a difference because of the public matching system. So it's one of the things that sort of comes up, that it's just, it changes the flavor of how you talk to regular residents who may not be wealthy folks. It's really good. One of the things, another benefit I want to talk about, and this is someone who I've spent well over 20 years working in communities of color. The New York system has shown that they've been able to diversify the number of candidates through the public financing system. They've also, particularly in the early years of the system, they were able to touch issues and make campaigns out of issues that were very community focused. So things like lead poisoning in the Bronx, for example, were things that they were really difficult to inject the issue into the mainstream media around the campaign. But thanks to the public financing system, they were able to get candidates to really run on those platforms.
So there's a potential issue benefit in terms of what the campaign's actually about, and a candidate sort of recruitment almost benefit as well, as you see it.
And I would say the other benefit sort of ties into that, which is that candidates can essentially combine their campaigning with their fundraising. As people have gone after bigger and bigger donors, those two functions have sort of been separated, and candidates have to spend a lot of time on the phone or in-person meetings with large donors, and that's time that's taken away from actually talking to average people about their issues and their concerns, and it also is time that's taken away from their official duties, and increasingly it's eating up their time that they should be spending working on policy issues.
I want to be sensitive to the clock here because we have to move on to our candidates for mayor, but I want to ask you one final question and a quick precursor before that. What about the argument that you hear that says, when it comes to public financing systems, that people say, I don't want my tax dollars or even my voluntary checkoff contribution going to support candidates who represent issues that are fundamentally oppositional to the things that I believe in? What's the response to that kind of argument, which you hear time and again when it comes to public financing systems?
Well, for me, this is sort of like, I don't like to pay taxes sometimes because there's bombs being brought. It's like the truth is that depending on how we structure the system, this may be voluntary in the first place. So it may be a moot question, but if in fact it is out of the public fund, just like New York does it, you're already spending money on things that you don't want to spend because there's the lack of accountability within the city council. I think it's a very difficult to imagine that we have the influence that we think we have when everyone is really focused on raising money from uber wealthy and from corporations. I did want to say one little thing about that too, is that as someone who leads a reform organization, we're always sort of put in a corner as, we're mad at corruption and those snakes in City Hall. And I want to say that like some of the folks that are sponsoring and endorsing this, the work that we're doing on public financing, a lot of these folks are master fundraisers. They're not the typical folks you would imagine in, sort of in a progressive circle. They're like folks that really are good at this, but hate and resent the fact that that's what they have to do all day because they didn't get into this work. I don't care what politician you pick, nobody really got into this work to be a professional fundraiser. So this helps
You hear
everybody.
this a lot from members of Congress and the U.S. Senate, where the pressures are even greater than you get in a municipal election cycle.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I say to those people, this is part of the cost of democracy. We pay legislators salaries after we elect them because we don't want them to be taking bribes for doing their official acts. They have to be able to support themselves. This is part of a necessary part of our democracy, that if we don't pay for these things, some special interest will, and that's their way of buying influence and buying politicians, and that's ultimately bad for all of us.
David Melton is the Executive Director of the Illinois Campaign for Political Reform. Ray Lopez Calderon is the Executive Director of Common Cause Illinois. Please join me in giving them a warm round of applause. Thank you both very much. As I said at the outset, we're now going to shift to my right side here, stage left, as we bring in 4 candidates running to be the next mayor of the city of Chicago. They include, moving from the near side to the far side, Alderman Bob Fioretti, Dr. Willie Wilson, Cook County Commissioner Jesus Chuy Garcia, and William Doc Walz. Please join me in welcoming all of them here to today's forum. We're going to pose some of these same questions to them and get their insights on campaign financing and their own experiences. But what we've first want to do and tee up for each of them is a chance for them to address each of you for 1 minute. So we'll give each candidate a chance to introduce themselves and their candidacy here for 1 minute. We'll hold you to that time period just because we're trying to get to a lot of voices here today. And since the microphone is on the far end, we'll begin in reverse order and come to Doc Walz first. All right.
Thank you. I'm William Doc Walz. I'm competent.
And we'll ask that you stand up. My apologies. The only reason, so everybody here and the camera can see you all. My apologies.
Good morning. I'm William Doc Walz, born and raised in Chicago. As a former top assistant to Mayor Harold Washington, I'm competent, knowledgeable, experienced, and fully conversant with the functions, operations, and inner workings of Chicago city government. I'm the one candidate for mayor of the city of Chicago who can help to unify this city by promoting cultural and diversity sensitivity amongst people of all ages, races, socioeconomic backgrounds, all religious persuasions, all sexual orientations, all physical and mental disabilities and limitations. Born and raised in the city of Chicago, graduated Horace Mann Elementary, Chicago Vocational High School, Tuskegee University, and IIT Chicago Kent College of Law. I'm committed to bringing all of Chicago together under one city banner that represents fairness and opportunity for all.
William Doc Walz, thanks so much. We'll now turn to Commissioner Jesus Garcia.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Jesus Chuy Garcia, Cook County Commissioner. Most of my political life has been fighting the machine on the southwest side of the city of Chicago. First elected alderman in 1986 when I helped break the back of the old machine obstructionist block in the city council. I've also served in the Illinois Senate from 1993 through 1998. I'm a Cook County Commissioner for the past 4 years and floor leader for President Tony Preckwinkle. In addition to my political life, I've also been a community activist as a paralegal, a housing executive director, as well as the founding president of a community development corporation addressing issues of violence, especially among youth, and also developing schools and making them the center of community in my community, as well as working with the northern community, or the community to the north of Little Village, which is the North Lawndale community, to demonstrate that you can have great schools even in working class and poor communities in the city of Chicago. I want to be mayor of the city to put it on a new course and bring all of its neighborhoods together through a coalition of multiracial, multi-ethnic, across faith in Chicago, and put the people of the neighborhoods first. Thank you.
Commissioner Garcia, thanks so much. Now to Dr. Wilson.
I'm Dr. Willie Wilson. Let me first thank God for his amazing grace. And next to the board here and the people who make this happen today, thank you for inviting me here. I'm not a politician, I'm a business person. I was a sharecropper down south. Ran with my home at age 13. 7th grade education, made 20 cents per hour. During my course of life up to now, we own 6 McDonald's restaurants. We own a company today does over $60 million a year in sales. During the course of my life, we hired over 25 or 30,000 employees. Some came on to be doctors and lawyers and so on and so on. I put about close to 1.6 or $7 million of my own money in this race. I don't want to be bought by nobody, by the union or by no major corporation. I refuse to do that. I'm 2 generations from slavery. I don't want to go through slavery in this 2015 by somebody buying me. I'm against taxes. I'm against red light cameras. Thank you.
Thanks, Willie Wilson. And Alderman Bob Fioretti.
Thank you. I do want to say thank you for everybody for coming out here today. Vote yes on fair elections in Chicago. Let's make sure we do that. But you know what? It got on the ballot by corrupt means to make sure that people in this city didn't have a voice on an elected school board. It was part of an operation organized to make sure that the voices across this city in 50 wards didn't have a voice on an elected school board. We only have it on 38 wards, as you know. But it was a procedural move that when we called it up and we walked in on that day to go into the Rules Committee, that all of a sudden they had 3 initiatives instead of 1, and we were going to call it 2. So when you vote yes on this day, remember how it got there. The same people that bring you big financing here in this city, the Rahm Emanuels, who believes in $32 million to do misleading ads, are the same people who helped get this on the ballot. Now, I must say that the people of Common Cause and Illinois Reform are on the right path. But you know what? Let's make sure that we're not being used in a system of corrupt money politics.
That's time.
Thank you, everybody.
Alderman, thank you very much. So let's move into the meat of the conversation as we go forward here with 4 of these candidates running for mayor. I'm curious to know by just a show of hands, then we'll get into it, how many of you who are running for mayor support the fair elections referendum on the ballot on Tuesday? Right. All right, so 3 of the 4. And you, Willie Wilson, do not support it. You do support it. Okay, forgive me for missing you. So we have 4 people here by a show of hands, all supporting it. Let me start with you, Doc Walls. Why are you in support of this particular referendum? And what effect would it have on people like you running for office in a city like Chicago?
Yeah. One of the most important things you have to ensure in any election, whether it be elected school board, municipal elections, state elections, is that everyone has an equal opportunity to participate and to possibly get elected. That's the only way to ensure that a democracy is safe from intrusion by major corporations, political action committees, and other entities that might be interested in just exercising undue influence. So it's important to me that we make sure that we have reform in our campaign financing that ensures that everyone has equal footing. As was mentioned earlier, our congressmen spend all their time fundraising. And that's unfortunate because they're not free to do the people's business. I want to see elected officials who are free from influence, who are free from corruption, who don't have to pick up that phone when someone calls simply because they were huge campaign donors. If we do what's responsible, we'll make sure that every citizen of the city of Chicago gives a small portion to an election budget for candidates across the board. And that will ensure that everybody's interests are served in this.
Let me ask a very short follow-up here. Just to take us inside your campaign. You've run for mayor before. You've run for other offices here in Illinois. What difference would this make to your ability to actually expand your campaign's visibility?
If you notice, I'm that one candidate who doesn't have millions of dollars in his campaign funds. As a matter of fact, WTTW excluded me from their debate, and their only rationale was that I didn't have $1 million. Certainly Willie Wilson does, Chewy does, Fioretti has access to capital, Rahm has $30 million, which is just ostentatious. It makes no sense whatsoever. The interesting thing is, people are finding out that money does not vote. Money does not make you perform better or be perceived better in debates and forums. The only thing that money does is it clouds your whole campaign, because everything about your campaign is about money. Whether you're going out to get signatures on nominating petitions or going out and talking to the public, people wonder, why are you adopting a position? Is it because this union or that union supported you and it's good for them, but not necessarily good for the average person? So the difference that it would make in a campaign like mine My campaigns, too, are self-funded, just like Willie Wilson says his campaign is self-funded. I owe nobody anything. But our campaign has proven that you don't have to have a lot of money. All you need is $1 million message. And we believe that our message to the 99% resonates with people. The difference it would make is that we would all be considered on equal footing from day one. We're coming from behind, and we're moving with speed and alacrity because over the course of this campaign, we've showed people that it's the idea whose time has come that means more than all of the money that you can muster.
Let me get the others into this conversation out of fairness as well. Commissioner Garcia, I'm curious to get your response to that, and also as somebody who has run for elective office at multiple levels before, what effect would something like this have on your experience of being a candidate for office?
First of all, thank you for the forum and for the conversation. I've always represented perhaps the most working class districts, whether in city council, in the state senate, or the Cook County Board, Chicago Southwest Side. And it's been very clear to me from all three legislative bodies that money plays a huge role in influencing the conduct of its members, how they vote, who they're surrounded by constantly, lobbyists, whether at City Hall, whether in Springfield, or the county board, to a lesser degree at the county board. But it is quite clear that the people who exert the most, have the greatest presence ever present, are lobbyists and special interests, always seeking to do favors to council, to provide advice to legislators, and it's a corrupting influence ultimately. Money separates people from their constituents, from the voters, and it's time to remove it, and I applaud this effort. I'm also truly horrified by the Citizens United decision of the United States Supreme Court. That is about takeover. It's about allowing the wealthy in this country to control politics and to set the agenda and to do essentially whatever they want.
I'm curious to know from Willie Wilson's standpoint, as someone who is self-funding and said that you're doing so in part because you don't believe in special interests guiding your campaign in any way or having even the perception that that would be the case. A potential system might actually prohibit your ability to put in the kinds of funds that you've donated like this, and yet you say you're for it. So how do you square those two things?
Well, first of all, I'm glad I got $1 million, okay? I work hard for it, all right? And I can use my money where I see is the best use. If somebody don't want $1 million, got $1 million out here, just give it to me, okay? We can use it, all right? What we do with our money is this here. Every year for the last 30 to 40 some years, we've been giving away $800,000 to $1 million a year to church and different organizations with our money, right? Now, as related to $30 million to the campaign, all right, to run the Manning campaign, that is, all right? I think that's a sign of being bought by major corporation union, all right? I don't go for that, all right? Anybody could have some dollars and put it in their own, because if you put my money in your own, that means I'm serious and I know how to make money and I know how to get the city out of debt and bring it to a conclusion that we can balance the budget, all right? If you haven't got $1 million, what do you know how to do in terms of when it comes down to this big city, Chicago? This is a big city and it's about business, you know? So you haven't been through those experiences. It's difficult to take to make ends meet or even figure it out. As a person haven't drove a car and don't have a license before, I'm not gonna get in that car with that person to drive me, okay? You can drive anybody that knows how to drive a car. You can be in business with anybody that knows how to balance budget with their own money versus trying to balance budget with the taxpayers' dollars, right? That's what I stand for, and how to make things work. I think there should be some type of guidelines in terms of dollar-wise, okay? I have no problem with using your own money, if that be the case, but I have a problem with $30 million you're gonna sell the citizens out of Chicago, you know, to major corporation union. That's what I have a problem at. You know, use your own money as much as you wanna use your own money, all right? Because if you bought by major corporation and union, you owe them first. I want to be dictated to by the citizens of Chicago. And so some of the citizens of Chicago in my neighborhood, major corporations, offered me money, major corporation. I refuse to take it. I don't want nobody to get a perception that I've been bought. I want the citizens to make a decision for themselves whether they want me in this election or not. In fact, the dollars that I will get paid from the city of Chicago, I would give it away to charity organization.
Let me get Alderman Fioretti here into this mix too. And Alderman, you have not only experience in this campaign, but running for alderman. As a quick practical matter, what's required from a dollar amount standpoint, just from a macro standpoint, to run an effective campaign for mayor in the third largest city in the country, to comfortably do what you need in terms of organization, to get on air in an expensive television market? What would it take?
Well, to get on air effectively, it's about $800,000 a week. So,
$800,000 a week.
Yes. So that tells you how much you need to do.
So if you figure even just a 6-week campaign beginning from the 1st of January, rounding up, you're looking at $5 to $6 million you need just to be running solid television time over a 6-week period. Right.
So that poses the first question. But, you know, if we look at New York, we got to remember they have 8.2 million people. And they have a budget that's 10 times the budget of the city of Chicago. Our budget's between $6 billion or $8 billion, depending how you evaluate it. Their budget's at $75 billion, okay? So let's remember that in the whole talk. Also, they have another thing. They have term limits. It went from 2 to 3 terms now. And we need term limits. We need a smaller city council. They have 51 in New York. LA, the second largest city of 3-point-some million, they have 15. I always look down, and Scott Wagasback and I introduced a map that had 35 wards. So when we talk about how we're going to institute reform, and yes, I think the commissioner's right, lobbyist control. I have ward night, and I think people have heard me say it over and over again, come to a committee meeting and we don't even have quorums, and who's allowed on the floor? I guarantee nobody in this room would be, Alan, have you been allowed on the floor to go down? But those gosh darn, I was going to say a few things, the lobbyists are. They're right out there. And what's the difference between you and them? Nothing, except they have a paid client that they're trying to persuade us to vote for. So that's what the whole, and we have to change the culture of what lobbying is. I love the mayor when he said, oh, I'm against Citizens United. Stacey, you may have remembered that time too, and you may have been in the city council because she worked for me, and she's running for the 2nd Ward alderman, and she was there. And the mayor was like, Citizens, we got to get rid of it. We got to get rid of it. Well, what's he doing? Boy, he's raising it quicker than anybody of the Koch brothers can do. You know, so we need a fundamental change too.
Beyond
financing is right. Financing is one piece of it.
You're talking about shrinking the size of the council. You're talking about different restrictions around lobbying.
Yes, restrictions on lobbyists. I've introduced a whole series of proposals on it, on what we do and how we can, what they should do. Because it should be clear. I mean, they should almost be wearing badges. I mean, one committee hearing we had, there was about as many people in the room as this. And it was in one of the side rooms. Those of you that know 201A, Alan does, because he represents his community often. But I asked for a show of hands. Who's not a lobbyist? I could have waited for all day, but no. But everybody in the room was a lobbyist because of the issue that was before us.
All right, let me close because we need to move on to our candidates running for aldermanic seats in Chicago's wards, and then we'll open it up to questions from some of you. Let me quickly go back down the line and have you share in 30 seconds or so what difference you think a system like this would make in politics in Chicago, and what else you would fight for to improve the landscape here. And we'll come back to Alderman Fioretti and then move back. Actually, let's do it the other way, because I let William Doc Walls start, so I'll let Alderman Fioretti have the last word here. No. So I'm going to Doc Walls here. We're staying the same order. Forgive me.
No, it's fine. So. I love talking to you all because you all get it. See, hear the laughter with the inside jokes? It's always a question of who goes last, who goes first. The bottom line is Chicago is a city that's racially divided. We're the most racially segregated city in America. And we have to have a plan to balance that. Otherwise, we have one part of Chicago just pulling us all down, and we never are competitive in this highly competitive global market. We're one Chicago, and if we don't come together and realize that we're inextricably intertwined and that we as a people have to begin to develop our niche in the economic market, we'll never succeed. We haven't had an industry to call our own since the demise of the stock market. Every major city has their own industry. New York, the financial market, Broadway, LA, film and television, even Detroit, a city that's bankrupt, has the automobile industry. We don't stand a chance in the global economy if we don't come together and make certain that every single community in the city of Chicago is able to stand on its own. That means economic development, empowerment of those people who live in those communities, as well as the schools, the parks, the libraries, the things that draw people into those communities. If we don't get it, if we don't understand that we have to grow as one unified city, then we're in trouble. So I'm the candidate for mayor who stands to do that. My name is Bill Doc Walls, punch 5, Walls for mayor.
All right. William Doc Walls, thanks so much. And Commissioner Garcia, your closing thoughts on this matter of the ballot initiative and the broader context of...
The reason I support the ballot initiative is we need to broaden the base of voters who participate in elections. Super PACs, dark money, reduce that universe. They depress vote. They make people feel that their vote doesn't count anymore. So I support it. I also support the idea that small donors feel like their money matters, that their money goes elsewhere, and it levels the playing field. It's good for democracy, it's good for transparency, and it will help produce good government. Thank you. Punch 4.
Commissioner Garcia, thank you. And Willie Wilson.
Always in my last comment with a prayer, because that's how I got here. Okay. So, dear Lord, we thank you for guiding us. Thank you for bringing us here. Bless all those who's here today. Guide us all, dear Lord, because none of us know what we're doing. Only way we can get out of this whole situation is you guide us. And bless those when they leave here today. And bless those, dear Lord, when they have lunch today. Let them not to forget to say thank you for the food that you gave us today. Drive us home, oh Lord. Let us know that we didn't drive ourselves home. Bless all of these today and the commentator and all of us. And we thank you, oh Lord, because you, God, beside thee, there's no other. These blessings we ask in Jesus' name, one who said that not my will, O Lord, but thine will be done. Even Jesus Christ, our Lord and our Savior. Let the church say amen.
Willie Wilson, thank you. And Alderman Fioretti.
Thank you. I actually wrote a couple of notes down here that I think it's important. One, we have to ban the influence of lobbyists and what they do. As we were just talking about, they're allowed onto the floor. I mean, my gosh. They should be wearing badges, those stinking badges to identify them, because we know they're different then. At the same time, we need to ban them from soliciting votes on the days of the votes that are happening in city council and on committees. We can do that. Third, we got to ban them from, they shouldn't be a lobbyist, and they shouldn't be on a board for the city, because you wouldn't believe it, or appointed to a paying position at the same time. Sometimes people come in to see me, and I think they're coming in on the board that they're there for, but no, they're lobbying for a client. I'm like, at that point you get confused, because they wear too many hats and too much for their own pocketbooks. We need the fair elections. I've been an advocate for it, and we need to do, and we got to put the right kind of initiative behind. But at the same time, we have to tie it in with a smaller city council, term limits for all, because that's the only way we're going to get reform in this city and what we see. So, if you're happy with the way things are going in this city, then welcome to the 1%. If not, vote for me, punch 3. Thank you, everybody, and have a great afternoon. And thank you, everybody, for sponsoring this.
Alderman Fioretti, thank you so much for being here. I've switched over to the far side of the room as we move from our candidates running for mayor of Chicago to candidates running to serve on the Chicago City Council. We have here with us a couple of handfuls of candidates running in various wards throughout the city. We're going to give each of them 60 seconds to introduce themselves. We'll actually hold you to that time as well. We'll do it in alphabetical order for those who are with us, and then we'll get some open thoughts from them as to the questions at play, particularly when it comes to the small donor matching system. And I'd love to begin with Tara Baldridge, who is a candidate for 8th Ward here in the city of Chicago. Tara?
Yes. Hi, thank you so much. Once again, my name is Tara Baldridge, and I am a candidate in the 8th Ward of Chicago. I am running as a resident, as a mother, and as a passionate African American in a community that is divided, in a city that's divided. I believe that it takes ordinary citizens to stand up for what's right. And I have lived in our community for over 18 years, and I've seen the demise of our community through corporate interest invading our territory. I am fighting for our schools, our land, and our homes. The platform of my campaign is transparency, equality, and service to the community. I believe that if we work together, we can reclaim our community from corporate interest. We can reinvent our business district and our schools, and we can reignite a passion for democracy that we've lost in recent years. Thank you.
Tara Baldridge, thank you so much. Amy Crawford, is Amy Crawford here? I don't believe she is, so let me turn to Leroy Duncan, who's running in the 37th Ward.
Thank you for having me here. My name is Leroy Duncan, and I'm a candidate for Alderman in the 37th Ward. I've lived in the Austin community for 41 years. I attended and graduated from Crane High School. I also, after I left Crane High School, I entered the military, and I served 2 years as a military policeman. After returning from the military, I attended and graduated from this fine establishment, Roosevelt University. I worked for 3 major corporations during my career: BP Amoco as a senior accountant, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and IBM as a senior financial analyst. I was recruited by the community to run for Alderman of the 37th Ward, a community that feels ignored 3.5 years of the 4-year automatic term. The status quo is no longer acceptable. We're making changes and we're moving forward. We have major problems in our community: lack of communication and sharing information. I based my campaign slogan on that premise: inform to empower. As Alderman of the 37th Ward, I will provide information, resources, and the motivation the community needs to solve community problems and increase our allocation of city services. I will recruit desirable businesses to come to our community, not just businesses, but desirable businesses. I will bark upon my experience as a CAPS beat facilitator and military policeman and form a partnership with the police to solve the problems in our community. I'd like to thank you for your time. God bless. My name is Leroy Duncan, and I approve this message.
Leroy Duncan running for the 37th Ward on Chicago's West Side. We turn now to Juanita Irizarry, who's running in the 26th Ward. Juanita.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Juanita Irizarry, and the 26th Ward is mostly the Humboldt Park area, a little bit of Westtown, Logan Square, and Hermosa. My candidacy comes out of my having grown up in that community and living in that area for more than 40 years, working both as a professional and as a volunteer in community organizing and community development throughout the area regionally, and also running a national training institute on community development. I'm also one who was fortunate enough to have started at Head Start and ended up at Harvard University for a graduate degree in public administration for the Kennedy School, and very much feel driven by the idea that when a kid from the hood has the opportunity to have that kind of education and experience, I really need to bring it back to my community. I've worked for years against the Democratic machine in Chicago, the HDO, the corruption of the Hispanic Democratic Organization, and want to bring an independent voice to our community where we have a rubber stamp alderman who votes with the mayor all the time and is very tied to a lot of the development interests in the ward, including his own profit motive. And just in my years in the nonprofit world and philanthropy, I just want to, for transparency, say I was also a program officer who helped to bring funding to ICPR. So put it all out on the table. That's my background. Thanks.
That's Juanita Irizarry, who's running in the 26th Ward here in Chicago. By alphabetical order, it's also fitting that we turn to the other candidate in the 26th Ward, incumbent Alderman Roberto Maldonado. Alderman Maldonado.
Thank you so much, and thank you for hosting this forum. My name is Roberto Maldonado. I am the sitting alderman in the 26th Ward. I was appointed in 2009, and I did run in 2011, and now I'm seeking re-election in the next week on the 24th of February. In the last several years since I became alderman, we have improved the challenges of public safety by over 90% in certain parts of the ward. We want to make sure that we have the opportunity to serve 4 more years to get the rest of the residents of the 26th ward to feel that 90% of the challenges in public safety have been resolved. Also, out of 11 elementary schools that we have in the ward, in the last 5 years, we have made 6 out of those 11 elementary school level 1s. When I became alderman, we did not even have one level 1 school. I want to have 4 more years so that I can work with the principals and the teachers and the parents to make sure that we make the remaining schools that have not reached the level 1 to become level 1s. I also am proud that we have brought in 2 new high schools into the ward. 9 new high schools experimenting with new educational models. These are new high schools, 2 that they have relocated to the 26th ward with an exceptional track record, sending our students to university. One is Shy Arts, that 96% of those students are admitted to 4-year colleges, and the Marine Leadership Institute, that 94% of those students are admitted to 4-year colleges. And lastly, we also have attracted 36 businesses in the last 4 years, and right now they have even opened, or they are a different process of permitting to open up the doors in the next 4 years. And after the recession, we hope that in the next 4 years we can even attract even more businesses into the ward.
Alderman Maldonado, thank you very much. And we turn now to Richard Martinez in the 10th ward.
Thank you for having me. My name is Rich Martinez, running for alderman in the 10th ward, the very southeastern corner of the city of Chicago. I'm a husband and father of 5 children, a graduate of Loyola University, political science and criminal justice. I have served the last 20 years in government. I'm the only candidate that has actual city council and state legislative experience. I have also served in various capacities in the community. Over the last 20 years, I have successfully fought against not 1 but 2 mayors, not 1 but 2 billion-dollar companies. 4 years ago, we helped lead the fight against the Leucadia coal gasification plant that all the politicians said was a done deal. We helped defeat that not once but twice. Currently, we're fighting the Koch brothers and Petcoke in the 10th ward, and my campaign was successful in getting a referendum on the ballot to give 10th warders a voice and a say to vote against Petcoke in the 10th ward. Ran 4 years ago, got 40% of the vote, recently endorsed by the Chicago Sun-Times, and I look forward to serving the working class families of the 10th ward. Thank you for having me.
That's Rich Martinez running for the 10th ward seat in the city of Chicago. We also turn now to Stacey Fisk, who is running for the 2nd ward seat here in Chicago.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here today. Thank you to ICPR. I'm Stacey Fisk, and I'm running for candidate in the 2nd ward. I don't know if you're familiar with the 2nd ward, but it is the gerrymandered poster child in this upcoming remapping, and that was done due to trying to take out a political rival, actually my former boss, Alderman Fioretti, that I worked for just recently as of September. I'm running on 3 things. I'm running on my experience, my community background, and also independence. I'm the only candidate in the race that has any ward experience. I left Alderman Fioretti's office after being there for almost 2 years, and I'm confident that I can lead our ward day 1. My background prior to public service was community driven. I have been working in many areas of the new 2nd ward, trying to save our historic spaces and places through Preservation Chicago and also throughout the city. So I'm very much from the community. And then 3rd would be independence. I am running as an independent candidate in this ward, or in this race. I have worked for Alderman Fioretti and Alderman Wagaspak, 2 of our most independent candidates in City Council today, and I've worked with them for almost 4 years now. There are a lot of machine-backed, special interest-driven candidates in this race, and I want to make sure that there would be a candidate that is people-backed. It was important to me that I was going to run a great campaign from the beginning, and therefore I wanted to be about the people and not the special interest and developers, so I chose early on to pledge not to take that money, and I'm proud to say that I'm part of the test pilot of Run Clean. Ladies, Kathy and Carla are here today. Please wave. This test pilot was great. There's 4 out of 6 of us that signed up for that. We agreed to a cap, $125,000. I actually wanted it a little bit lower, but it's a starting point. And when I am out, it's effective because only 4 out of the 6 of us chose to do this program. You can find the website runclean.org. Thank you.
That's Stacey Fisk in the 2nd ward. We turn now to the 7th ward on Chicago's South Side with Chavez Valentine. Chavez?
Hola, ¿qué pasó? Me llamo la Chaveta Valentine. Me habla poquito español, me comprende poco. Now let me say that in English. My name is Chavette Valentine. I speak a little bit of English, but I can understand just as much. I'm running currently for the 7th Ward as Alderman. I've lived there my entire adult life. In 1991, I moved to the South Shore area because it was predominantly one of the few areas where African Americans of any prominence could live. It's also one of the few areas in the city of Chicago where we have access to a lake view. I'm coming to you with a very strong agenda in that in the 7th Ward, some of the concerns that we're facing is when we were abandoned by Sandy Jackson, an absent leader who's now on another venture at this time, and we're here to clean up and make things right. She left us with an 80% felony rate from 18 to 28. Let me say that again, 18 to 28. 80% of the young men in the 7th Ward have criminal or felony backgrounds. Secondly, educational programs, very major issue in the 7th Ward. It's 15 seconds remaining already. Very critical issue in the 7th Ward. I look to not only maintain, but to reinstate these programs. My entire agenda is based on rebuilding the 7th Ward. Not only rebuilding the 7th Ward, but bringing back critical and instrumental programs, senior services, services for our mentally ill, services for our displaced and for our, I'm distracted, I'm sorry, looking at the time, lady,
Yeah,
and for the community.
Right.
Thank you, and that's my agenda.
That's Chavette Valentine in the 7th Ward running for Alderman. And we turn now to the 36th Ward, Gilbert Villegas.
Good afternoon. Gilbert Villegas, Marine Corps veteran, small business owner. After returning from Desert Shield and Desert Storm, I worked for the Teamsters as a union steward business agent where I fought for workers' rights. After a decade with the Teamsters, I got recruited to the Department of Transportation, where I fought for small businesses, minority-owned businesses, to make sure that they were participating on state and federal contracts. After 5 years there, I was recruited to a not-for-profit, where I advocated and drafted legislation and had the pleasure of meeting the former State Senator Susan Garrett. And then after 3 years there, I was Chief of Staff for the Capital Development Board. And so I'm the only candidate that has the experience as it relates to private sector, not-for-profit sector, and public sector at an executive level, and really am the one prepared to hit the ground running in the 36th Ward. I'm going up against the political godson of the Cook County Democratic Party, where money is no issue, and that's why I'm glad to see that these types of forums are occurring so that we can level the playing field. Thank you.
That's Gilbert Villegas, a candidate for the 36th Ward, and to Anissa Wannett in the 33rd Ward. Anissa.
Hi, my name is Anissa Wannett, and as he said, I'm running in the 33rd Ward. Thank you all for coming out, and thank you to ICPR for hosting us. I got into this race because the city's making irresponsible budget decisions on our behalf. And I live in a very diverse ward that does not include a lot of the diversity of the ward in its decision making. And then the third reason is because we lack accountability and transparency in our government. So that's why I'm here today as well, right? The public trust in Chicago has gone down. I have always been very interested in political party finance reform. I kind of stalk ICPR regularly whenever I'm having a bad day at my job, and I'm like, ooh, are they hiring? They never are, which speaks well of the organization, but that's a whole different story. But I'm the policy wonk in the race, right? And I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of people who are spending their lunch hour listening to political finance reform. So you are also policy wonks, so we speak the same language. I think it's important, as you know, we've heard a lot about what's happening in New York. I can give some examples from other countries, and that's how I came into political party finance reform, was working for an organization called National Democratic Institute that worked in overseas on political party finance reform. Can I have 2 seconds?
You can wrap.
I'm running against the union and the machine, and you want to see money? Come look at what's happening in the 33rd and how much I am spending, and it's the votes are going to be. It'll be interesting to analyze this one at the end.
All right, we're going to swing around from the 33rd to the 9th.
I'm a teacher, so I like feedback. I just left my students today, and so I need a little feedback, or I'm going to give you a test or something like that. I teach Kennedy King College. I'm a professor of political science. I've also taught at Chicago State University as well. I'm a graduate of Rutgers University with a BA in Public Policy Studies and the University of Chicago's Harris School with a master's degree in Public Policy Studies as well. I'm running, as a few people here mentioned, because people in the community asked me to run. My work in the community has included a lot of education reform efforts. I've hosted a television show for WYCC for the past 6 years. I have worked as a professional performing artist and arts entrepreneur in our community and have done a lot with young people around those efforts, and also I've done a lot of work in the faith-based community. If you come to the 9th Ward, you will understand that we have a significant amount of problems in our ward. Our current alderman is funded by the mayor, and that's why I'm very interested in this conversation, because as many people here, I am just someone in our community that wants to make a difference, and I don't have $1 million in the bank. And I'm running around begging my family and friends every day to give me money. And they've stopped, some of them stopped answering my calls. So we need campaign finance reform. It's very important. Thank you.
So let me stay with you. I want to open up this to everybody here. First of all, how many people in this race support the referendum on the ballot on Tuesday around small donor matching systems? So we have unanimous support here among these candidates represented. I want to come really quickly, Ted, to you. You talked a little bit about this. What difference would this make in a race like yours?
So in a practical sense, it is about getting a message out. And unfortunately, when we have such low voter turnout, we have less than 30% in municipal elections, a lot of people are not paying attention. Money gets people to pay attention to what you're doing. And so the challenge is when you're facing someone who has a lot of money, they have a lot more name recognition. And so our real challenge is being on the ground trying to get people to pay attention, but money does help to get our message out.
All right, what about the rest of you? Why would this be important? Yeah, Chavez Valentine.
What I'm finding is that most of the key members or the candidates that are running in this race that are being supported by the super PACs, yes, their dollars do outmatch you. But what I'm finding is that in the 7th Ward, the message is more important than the money. Because what's happening is the people are realizing that the money's not being spent in the community, it's being spent on special interests. So whereas you have the super PACs that support their candidates that are on a pre-planned agenda, the candidates who actually have an initiative or an interest in the community and rebuilding the community, we're being ousted. I'm being spent out 3-to-1, and I'm also a self-financed campaign, whereas I'm, like my gentleman just spoke, begging family members to contribute to my campaign, because basically the super PACs corner the market as far as the fundraising goes, and then they block you out from raising money through their super PACs, so it is important.
What would you ideally want to have at your disposal to run an effective campaign? How much money would you think?
To be perfectly honest, for an automatic race, it does not take that much money. I could run an effective campaign at $20,000.
$20,000.
At $20,000.
How many people here could run an effective campaign at $20,000?
For the 7th Ward.
Depends on who you're running against. Tell me more about that.
So I've raised about $30,000. The machine candidate, if you...
Go ahead and have you stand up. Yeah, thank you.
I ran all these numbers last night. Again, policy wonk. So I've raised about $30,000. The machine candidate, if you include the Chicago Forward money, is at $187,000.
In your ward?
In my ward. And the union candidate is at $70,000. So in terms of, the machine candidate's kind of backfiring. She's put 3 mailers, the same size you're getting from Chicago Forward. We've been getting 3 mailers from her, plus the 2 Chicago Forward mailers a week. One of my volunteers brought her stack the other day. It's this high. People are really annoyed by the mailers, but everybody knows she's running. The union candidate has also been able to put out mailers as well as get yard signs around. We finally ordered yard signs last week. Most of my...
And you're a week before the election.
A week before the election, yeah. Or no, we ordered them yesterday. We'll get them today for a week before the election. So it's the reason people now know my name is because as the policy wonk, I got both the paper endorsements. And so since then, we've gotten a lot of momentum and feedback, and oh my God, I didn't know you were running. This is so awesome. Can I volunteer? Can I give you money? But that was only within the last 2 weeks.
All right.
So it's name
Richard
recognition.
Martinez wants to get in here on the 10th. We'll hand you a microphone too.
Yeah, appreciate that. In my race, the incumbent's already well funded, $200,000 already, most of that which is supported by dirty polluting industry, not including the mayor's money. So now we have mailers every day, a mailer every day coming on behalf of the incumbent. I have another candidate who's running in the race. She has big union money, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. My donors are giving $50 and $100. But part of the saturation of the resources is really to suppress the vote. It's really to dissuade and discourage people from coming out to vote, because the people are fed up. They're tired of the mailers. They're tired of the robocalls. And our campaign has been the only one that has boots on the ground, that has actually gone to knock on doors in all 7 neighborhoods of the 10th Ward. That's what people appreciate, not the robocalls and not the mailers, but it's also a weapon and a tool used to frustrate the voters, to discourage them, and to suppress the vote.
Well, let me push back a little bit. Anissa, Juana, and you both cited, union money. You talked a little bit about corporate money, special interest money. I mean, they have legitimate interests, right? Legitimate interests on behalf of their members and the people, and things that they think would be good for the ward in the city of Chicago.
Well, dirty polluting industry isn't good for anyone's ward. So when they take the check, they represent their agenda and their interests. They no longer represent the interests of the working class families, and that's the problem.
All right, I want to swing it around to Alderman Maldonado to make sure that we're distributing here.
I don't have much. I have historically been able to raise substantial amounts of fundraising. However, I have always self-imposed a maximum contribution of $1,500, whether the donor has contracts with the city or with the county when I was a county commissioner or not. However, I mean, contrary to one of my opponents who is sitting with us here today, that 65% of her fundraising has come from 3 special interests. But I do believe that it is right to embrace this initiative, because forces us to talk to the same way that I call every single donor, potential single donor, asking for their support. I can equally spend the time speaking to my constituents like I do. I walked 2.5 hours twice a week. I've been doing it for 5.5 years, knocking on doors, asking my constituents, what can I do for them? If I'm able to do that, if I'm able to pick up the phone and ask for donations, I can do the same thing for smaller donations among my constituents. I don't have a problem doing that.
All right, let me get Juanita Irizarry in here just to make sure that she has an opportunity to weigh in.
Sure. Certainly, the incumbent is not up to speed on what I have raised, and actually, we're very proud to have a diverse set of folks funding us. We do have some labor money, which to me represents the working families and labor interests in our community. These are our teachers, these are our police officers, these are folks who are our community folks who are represented there. 70% of our dollars, however, do come from small donations from people in the community, from $5 to $500 to a few folks here and there who can afford to write a slightly larger check than that, and a few other Latino elected officials who felt like it was time for a change in our community. It's that kind of diversity that I think we all need to have in order to have effective races, and I think having a number of candidates in a race that can all be competitive is important for what we need in democracy. We don't need 1 or 2 voices drowning out all of the issues and concerns in our community.
All right, Gilbert Villegas, you look like you wanted to jump in here. What's missing from this conversation?
Well, it's the whole thing of political reform, campaign reform is great because, again, spending 50% of your time calling donors, asking for money is a hard thing to do. It's a very humbling experience as well when you're getting these small donations, but you have to pick up the phone and try to get some of the interest groups that represent your district. I have a lot of labor people that live in the ward, and so I'm proud to be accepting some of those dollars because, again, I'm representing their interests, making sure that the blue-collar workers are represented in city council. But when you're going up against, when you're talking about, the Cook County Democratic Party, 1.5 million, you're talking about 30 times the median household income in the 36th ward, which really puts those folks, we have a lot of great people in the 36th ward that want to run. However, because of that financial issue, they just can't run because they can't afford to run.
Tara, you wanted to jump in too, I believe.
I think one of the reasons that I'm most excited about political campaign finance reform is that in my ward, my challenger, the incumbent, has almost $300,000, and 90% of that is from corporations that have businesses within the ward that are not employing any residents from our ward. So we have a steel manufacturer that moved from the north side to the south side and received TIF money, and then in return contributes to the incumbent's campaign.
So what difference would something like a small donor match system make in the dynamics of that race?
Well, first of all, it would allow other interests not to come into our neighborhood and dictate what kind of businesses that we have there.
If you structured it with a cap.
Right. Because then residents have a vested interest in seeing what goes on in their community. They have an interest in the political system, and they feel some type of value when they put their money in, and they know what is actually happening with their money. Right now, no one knows where the money is coming from. People are not looking at the finances, and they're not seeing that this senior development is a gift to the company, and in return, they are contributing back to the aldermanic campaign.
All right, we're running short on time. I want to get two last comments in. Well, yeah, we'll get Ted very quickly.
Yeah, I just want to say we've raised close to $20,000, and it's really a drop in the bucket. It really means nothing. For an automatic race, really, you want to be at 50, 75 to 100 just to get messaging. Robocalls, direct mailers are a couple $1,000s a pop, and those signs are very expensive, so when they take them down, I get very mad. But they're very expensive. So what I'm suggesting is incumbents have a variety of ways, and they have a variety of advantages that make it very difficult for other people to come and to challenge folks in our democracy.
And Leroy Duncan.
Yes, we took a different approach in the 37th Ward. We understand the field is not an even playing field. We understand that. So I took a different approach. My campaign is basically run on volunteers. It is based on volunteers. These guys are knocking on doors along with me. We're doing the right things. We're doing our words is getting out through social media, Instagram, Facebook, Bumbler, Chumbler, whatever you want to call them. We're doing emails. We're knocking on doors with a grassroots campaign. We understand we cannot raise those dollars that the incumbents are bringing in and the other alderman candidates that are running that have special interest groups. We're not that way. I'm community-based, and I'm working with the community to get our message across and to get things done.
Stacey Fisk, if you were to structure this system, what would you do to ensure that it operates with maximum effectiveness? As a last question.
Restructure the
well, the small donor match. Would you put limits on it? How would
limits,
you see
a cap on how much?
On a cap on how much you could actually spend in a cycle?
I would absolutely put a cap on it. I think caps are good for a couple reasons. First of all, it shows how the candidate can budget. You know, I'm being way outspent in my race as an open seat. I'm at about 50,000, which isn't too bad, but I'm up till 2 in the morning, you know, stuffing envelopes myself if I don't have volunteers in that day. But back to that, if you have a cap, I don't know, I think 100,000 is pretty good for an automatic seat, but it shows how wisely you have to spend that money, you know, to get your message out. We're doing a lot of grassroots thing, I'm at the L, whatever. And when you get into council, when you are an alderman, you have so many dollars in menu dollars you can spend. You have so many dollars you can work with, and it shows. I have some real well-heeled candidates that are throwing $200,000, $250,000 in their campaigns. They think, you know, the world's their oyster. And so when they're making initiatives, you know, towards council, they want 2 ward offices. They want to double their menu dollars. And it's like, well, that's not reality. So I think a cap would be good because it shows how the candidate can budget once they're in elected position.
All right, we had a mix of people thinking yes or no on the 100. I've got to actually turn this over to the audience. So let me actually just invite all of you to thank these candidates for alderman for this portion of the session. Thank you all so much. We'll continue this, and let me pass it back over to former State Senator Susan Garrett.
Thank you, Steve, and can we all give him a round of applause for doing such an unbelievable job. Steve Edwards, University of Chicago, Illinois, Institute of Politics. Before we go into the questions, I want to make sure we don't lose anybody. I want to do a couple of shout outs again. Roosevelt University for hosting us here today, and the Committee on Economic Development who has helped underwrite this event. That really means a lot to us. We are going to do a call of action, and I want to do that before we take any questions. So if our 2 panelists to my left could talk about what it's going to take to make sure that we get the word out for people to vote on this advisory referendum. Ray, do you want to get started with that?
Sure. So, and I just want to say something really quick. You know, there was a comment earlier, and unfortunately candidates have left for mayor, but we've been working on, Common Cause conceived the idea of putting this on the ballot about over a year ago, and we've been pressuring on the city council to get this question on the ballot. So there was a comment about us being used by the mayor. I want to be very clear. We have talked to just about every alderman, including Bob Fioretti, who did not respond to our constituents in his ward. And I just wanted to throw that out there because we've been working on this for well over a year. Second thing is that this is a long game. This is a first step in a campaign. So the question on February 24th, we need the city of Chicago to say in a very emphatic way that they want a system like New York, because this is going to be a multi-year campaign. It's going to be grassroots. It's going to be organizing. And so we need everybody to vote yes. And so you can help. You can help by doing one thing. Go home and talk to everybody you know. Pick at least 5 friends that you know. This is the old school organizer in me coming out. Pick at least 5 friends that you know that vote and ask them to please vote yes. Educate them on this issue. That is the best way we can go, because today is the day of action. We've got to get this moving. Election's just a few days away. The other thing you can do is go to our website, fairelectionsillinois.org, fairelectionsil.org, and then there's more information there. And I just wanted to also just say, we've been blessed to have ICPR and Illinois PIRG and dozens of organizations, candidates, all 5 mayoral candidates, yes, all 5, endorsed this question. And just wanted to thank ICPR for highlighting this issue and for inviting me today. I'm really grateful.
Thank you, Ray. And Dave, would you like to do any call to action?
Sure. My call to action would be, we have to take back our democracy. If we want politicians to be answerable to us, they have to be reliant on us to get elected, not just for our votes, but also for our campaign funds. That's what this referendum is really all about, is taking back our democracy so that we have politicians who are answerable to all of us in the population, not just the richest and most powerful. I would urge, as Ray said, that you tell people about this, you urge them to vote yes on it. It's a first step, but it's a very important step in keeping our democracy going the way we want it. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
And I also want to mention one more time, cantv.org, live streaming. You can also, we're going to put this on our website, Illinois Campaign for Political Reform, ilcampaign.org. Please go to that, and we will have it live for you, just so to pass the word around. Jeremy, who is going to field any questions from the audience while we have a few minutes, that would be great. And Sarah has the microphone, so I think this man right in front.
Thank you. It seems like the reason people have to raise money is to get their message out. So I'd like to get your comments on the following: how we can get more free televised aldermanic debates, how we can get free airtime, maybe reduced airtime. So the idea of a small contribution multiplied by 6, to my mind, is the first step. Now, if you can get that money to be multiplied by allowing candidates, all candidates, to get their message out, would be even better. So I'd like to get your comments on how that can be accomplished in 25 words or less.
Let me take a stab at that. I think that you're right, that getting the message out is what it's all about in a campaign, and that's what the money really is necessary for. One way we could do that would be not so much anymore by mandating TV time, because we can't control when that's going to be on, and we get tremendous pushback from the commercial interests refusing to do it, as well, and from the people in public TV have very limited budgets and limited time. I would suggest that what we may want to think about is, in addition to trying to mandate some public time on TV, which we have put in a bill in the legislature, but I'd say in addition to that, we should think about maybe requiring local governments to set up websites where candidates can post their own messages, so that any voter who wanted to could click onto their local government's website, find a list of the candidates with candidate positions, and educate themselves in that way.
And I just want to add again the idea, and this is back to the Ron Clean idea, is that New York and some other versions of this, they have their own system of getting the information out to the public. So like the voter guides that people actually get in their mail is probably the best place to start, and so it's better than radio and better than TV. I wanted to add one other point, is that I'm actually part of a national organization. Common Cause is in 35 states, but one of the things that we've been working on is media and democracy. And so in some places, right now for city council wouldn't be a big deal, but we also have to pay attention to the fact that these super PACs and these organizations are flooding and actually clogging the entire airwaves with campaign ads. And so we want to think about whether or not that's even a feasible thing. But we've been working on trying to get the FEC and the FCC actually to work on this problem. So we'll keep you posted.
One other added benefit of these small donor things is as part of their agreement for receiving public funds, a lot of these systems also require candidates to agree to participate in a minimum number of debates that are broadcast, and so it's a good, it serves a good function in that sense as well.
And I'm going to put a plug in. We have Senate Bill 37 that we're in the process of amending, but Daniel Biss from the Illinois State Senate is carrying the bill. It would allow for government access channels or cable channels to allow for free advertising for candidates and incumbents. So, any other questions?
Yeah, just a quick question to the alderman here. All right. How many of you go speak to high schools? Okay. Well, there's an old Latin phrase that says, abs unum disque omnes, from one, learn all. And, you know, democracy is a discussion. Okay, so if there's anything I can actually propose here that might benefit the playing field a little bit is going out there and speaking to the young generation, because, you know, a lot of us say, hey, let's send these kids to universities, four-year universities, all this. Universities are great, but universities are built by the students, not the school building the students. So in that case, you know, the best thing you can do is go talk to these kids, because sooner or later they're going, oh, look who I met. I talked to this guy, and their parents are most likely going to end up talking about this with somebody else. Again, democracy, and this was said by the first Czechoslovakian president, and that was Matthias Carrig, I forgot his last name, Masaryk. And he said democracy is a discussion, and again, that is the key to it, that we continue to speak to the people who most influence the life of everybody, and that is our children. And I think that's where we're missing out the most opportunity from.
Thank you.
Can I respond?
Oh.
Can I respond?
Yeah.
If I could for a second, you're exactly who I'm talking to. You know why? Because I had a son that was your age that if someone would have taken 5 minutes to talk to him, they could have learned so much. You are the future of the city of Chicago. You are the young people who are going to make the decisions that are going to build this city, and we stand on your shoulders, believe it or not. So your voice and your vote is so important to me, because you're the voice that's being ignored. You're the person who has to make the decision, and you are the voice that is in the streets right now fighting to be heard. And you are so important to me. The young people and the senior citizens are so critical in this election. In 2011's aldermanic race, 12,345 people voted. In the 2014 governor's race, and I'm speaking specifically for the 7th Ward, 15,501 people voted. Do you know how many of those people were between the ages of 18 and 21? 13%. And your voice matters. The problem is that someone told you that your vote wasn't important. And you have to consider your vote just as important as the man sitting to your left or the woman sitting to your right. Okay? It doesn't matter who you vote for, whether it's me or it's the woman right here or the woman right here, whoever your candidate is, please exercise your vote to right. Right now, young man, there's a movie called Selma about hundreds of thousands of black people who died, look at me, who died for the right to vote. We're talking about African Americans who died to walk across a bridge just to cast their ballot. So if I can say nothing else to you, I say to you, and recruit all of your friends, tell anyone you know, talk to everybody at your school, and exercise and expand and discuss with them how important it is for you to get out and vote.
Okay, thanks very much. Great question. We're going to do one more if that's okay, and you get to be the one.
Thanks. Oh. Hi. I'm a student here. Well, actually, I graduated from the paralegal certification courses here at Roosevelt. I also graduated from Chicago State in the political science department. My questions are, 50% of the individuals in this city who are registered to vote have voted. Actually, 654,000 for the governor the last time. What strategies would you think would be possible to increase that? Because what we're seeing, this advisory ballot that we're talking about is coming up in not even, 7 days? So what strategies can be used to deal with two things? One, public policy financing. Two, the small percentages of people who vote in the 4th, the 6th, the 7th, the 9th. when those used to be, at one time, the highest percentages here, as far as in the city, bar none? That's my question.
So I'm going to maybe have our policy experts here at the table take a stab at the...
I'd like to take a stab too. I teach political science with
Okay.
young people. I'd like to take
All
a
right,
stab on
that'd
it,
be
if you
great.
don't mind. Thank you.
No,
So voter education is a very big issue. If you understand, I've worked on some civics programs and expansion of civics programs. A lot of high school students don't even have civics classes any longer, and it's a big deal. And when you do that and you don't educate people, you find that people do not participate in our democracy. The other thing is that when you look at what is happening with the folks who are involved politically, most of them are registering people to vote for their particular cause or for their particular party. There are very few efforts that have really reached a lot of our young people that are truly voter education initiatives. So what we've done with the city colleges is not just talk about sort of what the issues are, but I work with students, and we've done around the city colleges around how do you vote? What does a sample ballot look like? How do you find the information? Who are these people? How much money are they raising? Those issues are very significant, and if we don't attack voter education, not just registration, but education, then our democracy will fail, unfortunately, and I think that's where we are right now.
Very well said. On that note, thank you again. Thank you to CAN TV. Thank you to our policy experts, Common Cause, ICPR, Roosevelt, and we will see you again with another invigorating forum. Stay tuned.